In today's episode of Mentorship Hour Recap, we covered critical professional topics, the NIC and IBEC testing, the practice of full clearances and the importance of consultations, licensures, certification, and professional presentation. Hello. So last week, before we really dive into some of the questions that we kind of pulled up, we talked to Kelly and I talked to you guys about the things that I've learned so far with the NIC exam. And then Joanie and I just were talking about that, and I kind of wanted to revisit some of the struggles that educators are having when it comes to testing for licensure. Because a lot of you, even practicing electrologists, are kind of navigating those study areas and what to study. And I thought that would be kind of a great starting question. So last week I met with a proctor for Oregon, and we were talking about what were some of the expectations during the proctoring. And from that, this last week, I created kind of a mini lesson for my own students on the expectations of Oregon. And then I shared it with Joanie so that she could see it as well. But there are no standardization of education in the US for electrology, and I would even say abroad, because part of this is we were talking about how we have Canadian members, and the CPE up there is kind of just whatever your school tests you on. If you pass that exam, or what they say, write the exam. So if you pass your exam, then you get a certificate of completion, but there's no national certification program. It's you're just certified because you took a test from your school. And I have not found any additional information, because when I talk to my Canadian colleagues, since I'm so close to Vancouver, it seems to be that because there's no standardization, because there's no exams, there is a lot of people learning off of old material. And Joanie, you probably agree with this. As much as I love Hinkle, and you guys all know, I literally have the hair puller tattooed on me. The book's from 1958. And that is not new science. Mm-hmm. So as you guys are asking us about testing and these national exams, such as the CPE or the CCE or the CME or the NIC,
do it first.
Everybody's studying from a different spot. And it's a bit of a struggle right now. And your state associations are not responding to your teachers, because they're honestly just understaffed to return calls. So sometimes what I would say is, if you are in school or seeking these certifications and your teacher's not able to get through, and trust us, we talk a lot about this, I would
doing it on your earpods.
Yeah, it was.
So I would also lean in and just understand that you're not alone in that, and we are actively working on it, probably daily in some way. What kind of things do you feel like you're coming across even in the adaptation of the new platforms on your side? Because I just had to redo all of my testing information to Milady. What are you experiencing on your side?
Well, I feel like the My Lady program, they've gone through strides to make sure that it kind of correlates with some of the NIC testing materials. Then I think we had this conversation offline. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the NIC exam has a lot of extra material that just does not have anything to do with the field of electrolysis. And so when you send out the test prep booklet and it has the curriculum, right? It has the breakdown of all the topics that are on the test. That's kind of what you're studying. They'll have their reference materials too, which you can actually, you're supposed to be able to seek those out and then study the right stuff. The feedback has been consistently that there's questions about waxing, and there's questions about cosmetology, and there's questions about light therapy and things that are just not part of our curriculum at all. So there was questions like, which direction do you pull a hard wax strip off? And it's just like waxing has nothing to do. So, it's difficult to say. I mean, how do you feel like Illinois has the CPE exam, the IBEC, right? So how do you feel the IBEC measures up as far as like using that one for testing?
Eileen, how do you feel? I mean, because
Eileen, are you IBEC over there in Maryland?
Yes,
Okay.
we're IBEC. Yeah. I mean, so far I am 3 for 3.
Okay.
But we have a pretty extensive practice test that we've gone through. It's over 200 questions, and I just went through and added the questions from the Numa Lady textbook on chapters 2, 3, and 5 because they're pertinent to that exam. But for that exam, they have to study the IBEC book. They have to study chapters 2, 3, and 5. They have to study Mike Bono's healing videos on YouTube. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to manage, but and then of course they have to study our state regs because there's a separate test for that. And then the AEA infection prevention standards, which are in the IBEC book, but we try to drill them into it, and they tried to take what I've told them to do is take the test, my master test is what we call it, to see what they don't know. And then they go back to the materials that they have already, eaten, so to speak, and restudy what they were deficient in. And it constantly mixes the questions up. So they're not taking it, boom, boom, boom. It's not a repetitive thing. They're mixing the questions up. It's a Google form thing. So that's how I've been doing it. So far, so good. But I do feel like there's just a lot of different platforms that they have to study.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to merge it all together. But I do know that Jolene, my first student that took the test, she said that she was super glad that she read the PCOS stuff in the IBEC book. Because that's not really, I mean, it's touched on a little bit here and there, but it's really not forefront in the current curriculum. I mean, there's a little bit, but not like we see in our offices.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It totally does. And the other day, so I helped in the last 2 IBEC books. I was one of the test writers on, and we just got done writing in this last batch. And Patsy, and I'm pulling up my email to take care of this.
Yeah, she's looking for beta testers, right, for the new exam.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I think a couple of my girls are going to do it.
Yeah, for those of you that are listening in or, that don't have your CPEs yet, and if you're interested in the CPE, being a beta tester, you do have to have at least 1 year under your belt.
Yeah.
Still. But being a beta tester.
He doesn't.
No, I know your state doesn't. But if you're coming from an NIC testing state or an unlicensed state, then you have to have 1 year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's how they do things. So the
Frustrating.
So if you want to do it, I guess you can take the new test for a discount.
It's not that much of a discount.
It's not that much. I know, I saw.
No, it's like $400 or something like that.
Yeah, but it's a little bit of a discount, I guess. And so there is that opportunity. We can definitely share the link. I mean, to sign up for that if people are interested in doing that, getting their CPEs, it's available.
The
I'm
study
trying to-
guide, she said, was like only $40 compared to 90 for the
Yeah.
IBEC book.
That's
that
true.
in itself is like a
You could
like,
just have a
that's
study guide
ridiculous.
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
for the sake of the study guide.
It's so funny the amount of email inboxes that the association sends stuff to. I'll find the email and I'll put it later.
It's in the coalition one for sure.
Oh, okay. That I'm like in all of my personal email and I'm like, I have found nothing. So that's, I definitely, I love the idea of beta testing. Like in my exam prep stuff, one of the things that I did recently was I literally created each chapter, all of the questions, and then to shuffle. So it's stuck in a space, right? So say, for example, you're like, I'm doing great on A and P, which a lot of people struggle with anatomy and physiology just because so much terminology. But say, for example, you soar at that one, but then you do horrible at, I don't know, let's say microbiology. Okay. You can go back and revisit that space and see how to improve where you were struggling and where to study and that kind of stuff. And I do, I like that. There's so much, as electrologists, we're all trying to elevate. That's why we're here, our industry. And there's been such a lull in education stuff. And a lot of the people kind of like we're so lucky to have people like Joanne, just because she's been teaching for, gosh, like 20 plus years at least, right? Like your mom?
Yeah, like 30 years.
30 years. I mean, like that gives us history, right? And understanding of like the adaptations that have happened along the way. But so many of those teachers, when they sold their schools, they just retired and then went off and lived on La La Land on a beach and gave no information. So it is a little bit on the difficult side. So I know that like a lot of you have been asking us and fielding us those kind of questions of like what to expect. And we are working very much to get that to happen. There is a question that came up that Joanie had nabbed from the worldwide page that we absolutely loved. And it says, my tutor taught me not to overwork someone, but I'm seeing people doing full clearances in one session. How do you do that without overworking the skin? So I'm going to let you launch it with your answer because you found the question.
Support for Electrolysis Unplugged comes from Zapmaster Electrology, where education meets innovation. As a licensed school, Zapmaster offers 200 to 600-hour electrology program and mentorship to help new professionals thrive. And through Zapmaster distribution, electrologists can access trusted tools, loops, and supplies. Learn more at thezapmaster.com.
I think that it's so dependent on what you're working on. You should always err on the side of caution, meaning that don't overdo it if you don't know the client's skin and their reaction and all that. But usually with the body, there's no problems with doing full clearances. Like the body, the hairs are never that dense. They're usually not that thick. And it heals well. The skin's thicker. So you don't have the same amount of fragility as the face does. Usually, when you're talking about full clearances and staying away from that, it refers specifically to like full upper lips or doing like beard work and doing, exactly, like massive clearances in hairs that are thick and dense. Mm-hmm. And so that's usually what they're referring to. I think that, you want to clear the legs perfectly and peach fuzz included. Nothing bad's going to happen unless you're over treating, and that's a different story.
Yeah. And that one, I would say that you have to be very careful on just like people don't take care of their leg skin like they take care of their face skin. And so just, talking to them about like their post care in those spaces is pretty important.
Yeah. Pending that there's no other outstanding issues, like skin can heal well, client takes care of said skin. They're not going to do anything that is going to, be a detriment also to their healing process. All of that, if we're talking just about doing too much in one space, then really what we're referring to in those cases tends to be just the face, and it tends to be the area that is just very fragile, which happens to be the little goatee area, especially.
Yeah.
Like I've done full clearances on cheeks, even for beards. It's usually spaced out enough. I've done necks all at once. It's just, it happens to be just right here.
Yeah. And I agree with that. It's, you know, I was somebody that did a lot of full clearances for my out of town patients for my family's practice at the heart of like.
Yeah. And that kind of takes us into marathon sessions. And you can kind of talk a little bit about that if people are not familiar with what we're referring to with this. It was definitely a kind of like, I don't want to say a fad, but it was like popular for a certain amount of time. I remember.
Well, there's still people just doing this, like, that, like, I wouldn't say that they are doing something that they're willing to do that and their patients are willing for that. But like, I wouldn't say that it's something that.
No, it's not bad per se. It's not what I would do, but pretty much you've got these centers that are, let's say like, there used to be a place in Texas, they would fly somebody out.
They're still there.
So this person would stay for 2 to 3 days, and then they would just get sometimes double technicians, so 2 electrologists working at the same time, and then working for like 8-hour days.
I'm going to try to pull up a picture and show you guys. So when I was in the heart of, let's say like the early 2000s to like the 10s, okay, there was very few large volume based technicians that were confident and comfortable working in the trans community. Now, that is not my business in the sense of like comfort and understanding and that kind of stuff. But what ended up happening is I had a lot of people, when I say fly in from all over the world, that we had patients from Italy and England and Spain and South America that were all coming in, not just regionally, for these big batch clearings because they couldn't find it, right? And so and there are levels to this. So when we would do large clearances on that level, when it comes to full clearance, you're talking in different levels of how much density and volume is in that area. You might be working with somebody that would traditionally have like a lumberjack beard, okay? Where every follicle has a name and that name is like huge. Okay. And you would just blast every last hair that was grown out enough to treat. Okay. And you really had to lean in and tell your patients, like, listen, I need no less than 4 days, right? But no more than 7. Especially when they were doing hormone replacement therapy. And if they were on hormone replacement therapy, then had to even go more careful because the sensitivity of your skin when on estrogen, your skin becomes very delicate, very sensitive. And so they would come in and we would do 8 to 12-hour days. And at that time, there was no cap to lidocaine. Now we cap lidocaine based on the person's physique. Okay. And they would come in and they would start the day at, say, 8 or 9 a.m. And once an hour, our nursing staff would come in and increase, like, do the numbing injection. And then we would just kind of batch through. And it was 2 technicians doing this. So on average, it was usually a 2-day clearance. It was very rare for us to get people in there for like 3 and 4 days because it was 2 technicians in that space. When it was just 1 technician, if you had somebody that couldn't handle the overbearingness of your electrologist just kind of hovering, 1 technician's all you would do, and you'd do more days. They would come in and we would systematically kind of work through zones, and they would have patches of no hair at the end of the day, and then you'd go into the new zone the next day, right? And what I noticed that was happening, because they were doing so much work, and if you had a newer technician that didn't understand that putting more moisture into an area, that's a conductor, right? So higher moisture gradient means that we need to then change the output of that energy and timing. And so people were really just, I'm numb, hit me with your best shot, get every last hair. I'm only coming out here once every 6 to 8 weeks. And they would do that every 6 to 8 weeks. But your downtime post-procedure, okay? Our goal is no more than 72 hours of visible downtime, okay? In those procedures, your goal was 1 to 2 weeks of no visible downtime. Like, it's just, there was no way to do that. And so you were trying to make sure that you weren't getting weeping in the skin. that you weren't getting by the weeping, I'm talking about like the little crusties. I can't think of the word right now. My brain is not giving it to me. Where it was just like your skin was just pushing out lidocaine, out sebum, out anything it could. You were physically hot. You felt like you had a fever because your body was just trying to heal. And so we stopped doing that. And then we started capping our days at no more than 6 hours. Okay. And no more than 5 hours of injections. Okay. So you'd have a 6-hour day, but your last injection was in that 5th hour so that you could do the 6th. Okay. But then you couldn't like clear it, right? You just had to go after the stuff that was, and you guys know that like hair is kind of like, they're growing at like all different rates and lengths, right? And so you really could only get like the top layer. You couldn't get the undercoat, like an animal, right? You couldn't do that because then you were just putting too much energy there. So it's still happening. I will say as a technician, if I, with my expertise now, knew where the stopping point was, I could keep working and still give like a fairly good clearance in most areas. But the minute you get into here, even to this day, it makes so much more sense to feather than it ever does to clear. They're getting to their results, and the visual portion, the part that drives them the most crazy when they're having to go between appointment to appointment, is the fact that it's batched in, right? And so instead of doing like 12 or 24 hours worth of treatment in a short period of time, if you did that where you were thinning them out every time, they're going to be able to handle it better. Their skin's going to be able to handle it better. Would I still do big batch clearances? Yes, but not to that level. The other thing is it's really labor intensive on your body. Even though you take breaks during those injections, you're not taking enough of a break to rest your eyes, to eat some food, to have a bio break, right? But none of that's happening. It really should. And there's no amount of permanent hair removal that you will ever want to do if you're also compromising your skin at that level. Like dysphoria is going to hit in different ways, or dysmorphia will hit in different ways in those spaces if we're not taking care of your skin. So
one thing that happens, you have to be careful with clients that want to come in and all they want is the hair gone, right? And so that's their biggest concern. And when your approach is to feather through, and you have to kind of talk to them and say that, you will not be clearing the whole chin in one sitting, even if you could, because you can, sure you can, let it grow and I can blast it. But the truth is they'll say, like, I just want the hair gone. I don't care how the skin looks. But from experience, I know that a year down the line, when the hair is pretty much gone and the skin looks like the crater, like the surface of the moon, then they're going to care about the skin. So I always, you have to be the professional sometimes in these situations and just say that's just not an approach that you're willing to take, just for the safety of the skin, really, sure, I can be fairly aggressive, but I will never be as aggressive as the 12-hour day clearings. I would never do that. Not for here. I think that it damages the skin too much. Yeah. There's, if you were doing that for like somebody who wants to do their full legs, their full bikini, their full underarms, and that's just what took 12 hours, that would be a different story.
Right.
But 12 hours just on a small area like the face, no way.
It's absolutely heartbreaking when you have to tell somebody, like, listen, like, I know you want this and I want this for you, but not at the space where I'm going to hurt you. And I can hurt you. Our current is strong enough to kill the hair, but it also is strong enough to do a lot of damage. One of the random things that had gotten asked at that same space in regards to like overworking the tissue, when somebody is really pushing you for like upping those levels so the hair is dead. I don't know if you guys have ever played with this on your Apples, and I wouldn't ever fire your Apples when you do this, but if you ever feel sassy and you want to see what those ELs can get up to, clients don't understand that your basement is 0, but your cap of like what that machine could do, it would burn out your cords, probably your like a lot of things. But you could put that in like the 20 to 50,000 range of EL. And like why? Right? And so what I explained to patients during that time is like safe parameters in this space is for me to work in this zone right here. And that's what I'm going to do is safe parameters, because I am not going to be the person that just hurt your skin beyond what I could do. There is no amount of permanent that's going to make that ever be a viable option. I'm just looking for the video of doubles so you guys can kind of see what I meant by how I would work side by side. If you guys hadn't seen it in the past, it was pretty cool looking, but it's also
Difficult, I'm sure.
it's very difficult. A lot of it's about a ballet, moving between side by side. A lot of people don't realize when you are doing doubles and you have, 4 hands on one face, a lot of that is about like how you place your client so that each of you can work without being on top of each other. It's also one of those things like we lucked out in our office because we had technicians that were lefties and righties. So you would put a lefty on a lefty side, a righty on a righty side, and you just soar, right? But if I got to be on the right-hand side, even though I'm ambidextrous, like I'm not that ambidextrous, like where I feel good having another pair of hands in the way without just obliterating the skin. And a lefty and a righty going together was really nice to be able to have that. I'm so close to finding this video. It's like, I haven't done doubles in a long time.
Anita, lucked out means you were lucky.
Oh yeah. So
you got lucky.
Like somebody might say I was blessed to have, or I was lucky to have.
I lucked out. I was lucky.
Yeah. That was actually like that was one of those moments that I didn't even think about.
It's the other way around.
Not in the
You went out of luck.
Oh, lucked out. No, that's bad. Yeah, it's not. It means I lucked out, meaning I had the luck of Vegas kind of luck. What's this? That's not my doubles. That's singles. You'd think that I'd have this in just one folder. I don't. Joanie, the other question as I'm looking this up that we had pulled up was, hold please. All my tabs are open. Why do you feel, this is 2 parts. We had a potential student call up, and they are already an electrologist, and they were trained by somebody that said there is no importance to consults or certification. So, as I'm looking for this awesome video, why do you feel that that's important?
The consultations and licensing?
Yeah, licensing and certification.
Well, I mean, from experience, you're going to retain a lot more clients, be a lot more successful, make sure that your clients adhere to what your protocols are and your treatment plan is, and understand, what the process of electrolysis is, therefore have probably more success rates with your clients, better reviews online, if the client understands what the process of electrolysis is from the beginning. There's, I would sometimes explain a lot to, like, especially the newer electrologists that I would hire when their consultation, you're working through it in the beginning. It takes a little bit of time before you get your groove. And sometimes in the beginning, it's not as clear. And I could always tell because we would have clients come in for consultations. And then, they would disappear at some point, and they would usually disappear. And when they disappeared in their treatment plan would tell me what part of the consultation they didn't kind of failed. And so if a client comes in and maybe comes in for the first, like a consultation and then one appointment or so, and then disappears, maybe you weren't good enough as far as capturing them to stick to the treatment plan. You weren't encouraging enough. They didn't understand that what the process was. There's a little bit of cheerleading when it comes to doing electrolysis, especially in the beginning when you have big clearances to do and it's more painful. The hairs are bigger. You're trying to get them encouraged, right? If a client comes in for like 2 to 3 months and then drops off, it's because they didn't understand the treatment plan. And so they thought that they are not seeing results. This isn't working. And so they leave. And so when you are doing a consultation, those are always the most important points to me. And then, of course, I always want to make sure, like I'll tend to reinforce how the process is going to work. So, and the types of results that they're going to have. And you have to sell this, right? And I tell them like I want to know, tell me the history of like, if you're coming in for your chin hair, right? Tell me the story of your chin hair. What have you been going through? What's been going on? And so they go through and they talk about the laser and they talk about the years of plucking. And then I go through and I kind of explain like that in a year from now, like if you want permanency, you're in the right place. This is what we got to do. And then here's how this works, right? And we're going to go into it. Like I have to sell that this is the right choice. You came here, we're going to get this done. You do what I tell you to do. We're getting it done. It's going to work. Then the treatment plan, right? They have to understand how this works. And I will be very clear. Don't look at yourself in the mirror too much in the first 3 months. Don't overanalyze how many hairs are here. You have to explain, the undercoat, right? As you said, you have to explain the theory of the undercoat, that hairs that are coming in the week later are not the same hairs, that it's going to take how long it's going to take before you even start seeing regrowth from the work that you've done. And I like to explain the stair step because I really feel that one day they wake up and it's like, boom, 50% of the hair is gone. It's almost overnight. That's why the stair goes down that drastically. It's not like this. It's like this because they almost see it overnight. And then I tell them like every 3 months, we're going to be going down another step. And so you're going to see the results. But if you don't explain that they have to wait those 3 months and they just disappear, it's because they didn't get that. They think that it's not working. But what they're really seeing are different cycles, right? We know this, but did you explain it to the client? And then explaining things about healing is so important. The scabbing that they might get, the breakouts that could happen, and what you want them to do when these things happen, which is not go on social media and on Facebook and talk about your pimples that weren't addressed or the size of your scabs or things like that. Like I expect clients and I tell them like, you need to come back and talk to me. Call me and let's address it. If this type of aftercare doesn't work, we're going to try something else. If you get too red or you get too this, like we have to, it's a give and take, right? I'm working on your skin. I have to figure out what exactly works for you. And that sometimes doesn't happen the very first time. Sometimes we do a little bit too much on your sensitive skin and you've got, a bunch of little white pustules. Okay. Not ideal, not detrimental. Your lip won't fall off, but let's see what we can do to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because I want you to go through this, be committed, come in for your appointments, but also not feel like you have to hide for the duration of the time that we're working on this, right? So I've offered things like free aftercare. So come back in. It's a 5-minute thing. I'll do some high frequencies, zap, zap, zap. If you have little pimples, come back in the day later, because I know how easy it is to treat something like this. They feel like they get something for free and then we go through. But all of this I lay out during the consultation. And then I feel like the clients then are on board. They're in it, they're convinced, they're going to do it. And so we go from there. So I think that the consultation is absolutely crucial, honestly, because that's what sets the scene. If you don't do this, then don't wonder why your clients tend to disappear 6 months in, or they go online and ask questions to, the masses. And then the peanut gallery comes in and that, you don't know what kind of advice you end up getting from everybody else. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I think about a consult, that's your contract for expectation. And like, this is how I show up. This is what I need you to do to show up as well. And I get that it's time consuming and like it's mundane and that kind of stuff. But the fact is like you are doing something that is going to cost a lot of time and money And time is money. Obviously, that's how we get paid, but it's money for them as well. It's time away from whatever activity they want to do. Are they willing to commit to that? Without that contract of expectation, you're going to struggle to secure happy clients. And I think that down to the reviews, like you said, down to just getting to know the behind the scenes of what's happening. Your client intake form, I know that there's a lot out there and a lot of options out there, but it should be fairly detailed. You guys have seen mine before. It's not just, consent to treatment before and after care and their address. You need to know, like, are you on medications that could be stimulating this growth? I have this case that comes in, and she's great for the observation models that we have to hit. And she's got severe hirsutism, and her PCOS is unchecked. And I have been pushing and pushing and pushing, because it's uncomfortable because of how much we're doing, right? And she gets discouraged. And it's like, have you met with the doctor? Well, today it was a little bit, I knew it was going to be uncomfortable because I could tell her numbing cream was not applied correctly. Like, it was just like, she came in, I was like, nope. And so I was like, you know what? This is the perfect time. Let's go walk next door to the doctor. And my medical director is literally next door. I'm like, before we even lay down on the table, we're going to go walk over there. And I said, this is the patient I was telling you about the other day that we were talking about the PCOS and how we can go down those routes and yada, yada, yada. And all of a sudden it was like, by the time we walk back into my office, and she always comes in with her mother as like an emotional support partner kind of thing, and in her caring, And I don't care if somebody has a person with them as long as the person's not interrupting treatment, But mom realized, like, the 21-year-old, the young woman's mood changed and was like encouraged, like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize it was going to be that easy, right? Made an appointment for next week. She's going to have new numbing cream. She's going in for a PCOS consult, and this is going to probably change her into an insurance-based care, and it's going to be a lot less on her. But it's that constant consult of like pushing that through and understanding of like what you have to do.
This season, Electrolysis Unplugged is spotlighting our groundbreaking research project. We're working to bring legitimacy, data, and recognition back to electrology. If you're a practitioner ready to contribute detailed charting and client outcomes, or a student interested in learning the process, visit electrologycoalition.com, look under research, and get involved today. Together, we're writing the future of electrolysis.
When it comes to the certification side of things, you guys, I'm from unlicensed areas, right? And I believe in certification and licensure so much that I am putting in the work to get my state licensed. And when I say work, there is only a couple of us doing the work, okay? And that's for an entire state. And a lot of that comes from the research I do as a school, and I kind of build that for them. If you don't have certifications and licensure and continued education, and most of you on here have done something along that way or are trying to, I will tell you that the public does care, okay? When I was a professional electrologist, is what they used to call me, right? Before I had certification, it was like I was popular amongst the clients because I could connect with them, but that something happened when I came back with my certification, and they didn't care where the cert was from. They just wanted to know that I was going for continued education, that I had some type of formal test done to say that I was able to study enough to know that, right? And they wanted to know about what I was learning at my continued education. They became so invested in that. And I think that it just, it holds a lot of weight. And I have been at this, the convention will be my 20th anniversary in electrology. I've done 21 years of laser, but on the convention weekend, it's my 20th year. And I was just thinking about that, like 20 years of this, and I've been certified since 2011. And I would not change it for a thing. I don't necessarily need to be like, I like like the conventions that we do and stuff like that, because I get to know you guys. But there's something that gave me this foundation of, even with all that, I still want my license. Because even with all that, and you guys know how much work Joanie and I put into education, I still have people question whether or not I'm valid. right? And that's their thing, right? That's not a me thing. But with that certification, it helps resonate that validity. And I think that's really important.
Well, just last week, I had a client call into the salon, and she was looking to specifically book with a CPE. So we're licensed in California, but the CPE is not a requirement. And the state of California does not require continuing education in order to maintain your certification. So you can just be licensed, keep paying the fee every 2 years, and you never have to show your face anywhere ever again. I feel like that's a bit of a detriment because you only really improve, I think, by, staying current. And you stay current usually by doing things like what we're doing here and the conventions and things like that, So the continuing education, I think, is very important. But this client called and she was looking specifically to book with the CPE, and so even though there is licensure, clients do seek out these types of certifications. So higher certifications are, I think, very important.
As I pull up this video, just because I'm going to show you guys kind of the double technician I was talking about with the big clearance. There was one other one that Joanie and I both brushed upon before we met with you guys, and it was a question about what do you wear to work? And there was a statement I made on there, and I really want you guys to hear me say this because when I heard it, it just all of a sudden clicked for me. Dress as if you cost $120 an hour. I 100% was a person who would show up in sundress and sandals when I first started out in electrology, and sometimes worse than that. But I also had a very, my parents were like, you can't wear street clothes to work. You gotta wear something nice, right? And so I went to the dresses and the pretty stuff, right? But the minute I went to scrubs, it was there was some weird importance that happened with my patients. And it does make me laugh because I've seen those memes where it's when somebody thanks you for your service when you're wearing scrubs, but really you do hair removal on body parts all day. There's a true statement to that because I mean, they're like, thanks, thank you. And when you're wearing your scrubs, what do you do? But that is one of those things where the amount of cashier consultations that I've done or elevator consults. Tell me how you can talk about electrolysis from floor 1 to floor 10. I want to hear it. I think that that's really cool. Just so everybody knows, the video that you're about to see here, this is pre-COVID. Okay, so that's why I'm not wearing a mask. I used to not wear a mask. Okay.
We have to do a disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Judge me. Yeah.
Stephanie doesn't do this now. But this is a good example of the double technician. I'm going to just mute this because I don't remember what's playing in the background. But in this spot, we're on either side of the chin. Okay. And so this is one of my old colleagues back in my parents' practice. She's still there. That's Vanessa. And she and I would double up probably the most because we worked together the longest. And we were a righty and a lefty. It just kind of worked. A lot of what we did in this space was kind of the back and forth of figuring out where our hands were. If you have a patient that has limited mobility, that is going to be the worst part about doing stuff like this. And I would go as far as to say that that's more along the lines of if you have a person with limited mobility in general for electrolysis for difficult to reach areas, it's going to be rough. So it really comes down to knowing positioning, utilizing, if you notice there's actually a bolster pillow underneath their neck right here that's a little bit elevated that was allowing their head to tilt backwards. Joanne did this lecture in a symposium that I can't even remember how she said it, but she made me giggle so hard the first time I heard it, which was talking about when you're working on the lower half and you kind of double chin it. And I was just yes, okay, I'm not losing my mind. That is actually happening. Because I never did, my positioning class was watching my mom work, right? It wasn't until I went to a convention that I got to learn about positioning. And I was at that point, 2004 to 2011, I mean, I was barely into my career. So just kind of shows you guys, what it looked like. But the statement about like your dress code. I mean, you guys are all business owners. You can do whatever you want. And even this week, we have like a day where it's going to be like 92 degrees. I'll wear the lightest weight thing I've got that's still professional, whether it's my scrubs or whether that's like a business professional outfit with a jacket over the top. I'm like, you're not going to see me wearing that undershirt while I'm doing anything that day. It's too hot.
I think it's important for the look of your business, for your branding, for your image in general, just to have some sort of uniform. It doesn't have to be scrubs. I used to do, I always did a lab coat. So even from the very, very beginning, it's funny because when I started, I was, 17, 18 years old, and I had a client, and she said, that I was always very professional from the very beginning. And she's like, I saw you come in just 18 with your little lab coat, ready to go. Like, all right, let's do this. But then it was jeans on the bottom. So jeans and probably 4-inch wedges, of course, because I wanted to be 6'4". So, yeah. Keep hoping.
I'm going to show you guys the opposite angle because I want you guys to see, just so you guys, it keeps playing through. This is kind of funny. So anybody tell me who's more comfortable in this video between the two technicians?
The other Vanessa is.
Other technician, because somebody's got her elbows. These are my shoulders. Her shoulder is way up in the air. Even though I'm resting my arm.
No, you're scrunched up like this.
I'm like, yeah.
Your shoulder's at your ear.
Yeah. And everybody knows the head tilt the electrologists do when you get into that area, right? Mm-hmm. So what should have happened in this space, and the reason I kept this in here is because that patient would not lean back and over. Okay.
I was going to say too, it was like when you're here, because you were talking about limited mobility, but you also have the clients who just refuse.
Yes. Oh, like,
and I'm like, why are we here? Why are you here?
And like this patient was an all-day patient.
I know they probably get tired after a while.
You're gonna tell me no, and we're both here all day. Like, that's a problem. So that's just kind of so you guys can kind of see. I wouldn't do a full clearance having that kind of compromised positioning because I can't get my insertion right. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, and I mean right. Like, I'm not saying like, oh, I did pretty good. No, I'm not. I don't feel great in those moments because I know I can do better. I know that we only have a little bit left, but one of the ones that came up that you and I had kind of like brush over is okay, so I'm trying to think of how to word this. When it comes to the downfalls that we see the most in the electrology community, as an educator, and we do advanced classes all the time, okay? And this is not a dig on any electrologist. This is just what we see that we get to correct the most. What would you say is the number one thing that is causing bad results with our patients and we're having to correct as educators?
I think that people try to go really fast and they compromise the quality of their insertion. I think most electrologists tend to tweeze.
Yeah.
I think I see less stabby stab. So for the most part, like, it's the insertion tends to be kind of okay, but I think that most people are not discriminatory enough when it comes to testing the hair. I want it to just fall out with a gust of wind. That's how much I want it to be sliding out. And I see a lot of, even if it's just barely tugging, it's to me, that's a straight up tweeze. Like you said, you're like bad Stephanie. Well, like if there's any tug at all, it's to me that was a bad, that's an immediate regrowth. We're going to see,
under your magnifiers, you might see movement of the skin when a hair is larger and the skin is thinner. Okay. That is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is when you extract that hair, like I always joke and call it a bloop. It's like the hair kind of like just, yes. Like it has enough lubrication. It just comes like out. It's gorgeous. And I'm not saying that everybody's like struggling to make it happen, but I think that a lot of, because of that pluck that's happening. I think that it has to do a little bit with people afraid to give the proper distribution of timing and energy, like the intensity and the timing, because they want to make it as painless as possible to keep that person on the table. And so sometimes I feel like they compromise the efficacy of their work, in the sense of like in their head, they're like, oh, I'm gonna make it less intense for less time. So I'm barely in there. You're gonna feel nothing.
Mhm.
And the fact is like electrolysis is not painless. And if you prepare them appropriately and just give them the current that they should have had at the start, their results are going to come so much faster that they won't have to have more painful treatments. They'll have good treatment with great extractions. And yeah, will it hurt a little bit? Sure. It's electrolysis. I mean, how many of you loved having electrolysis done on you? Like on your face? I mean, like, is anybody just like tiptoeing through the tulips on that one? Because like, I'm not. And if you are, like, tell me your secret. But a lot of people find it uncomfortable, especially in certain areas of the body.
Sure.
So it doesn't mean that we get to reduce energy without changing that.
Don't you love that? You get the comment all the time. I mean, I do sometimes, especially with my more sensitive clients, and they'll ask, can you turn it down? And I was like, well, I mean, I can, but I don't know that it's going to work anymore. And then what are we doing? So
yes.
My mom cracked me up one time. She had a client like this, and the client was like, oh, can we turn it down? Can we turn it down? It was already very low. And she's like, well, anything less, and I'm just turning it off.
Oh my God. Yes, that's accurate.
Yeah. Unplug from the wall. So no, I mean, it's true. I think that it's important as electrologists, especially, there's you work by yourself. Mm-hmm. And so it's easy sometimes to get into bad habits. And so you have to be critical of yourself, have some self checks, if, make sure that every hair you're extracting has a root. But that being said, I can pluck my eyebrows and get a root on a hair. So it doesn't mean that because there's a root, I didn't pluck, right? So sometimes I see this at the school. I tell a student that was plucked, but there's a root on it. So, well, that happens when I tweeze my eyebrows too. Mm-hmm. So, roots on hairs just means that you didn't cut the hair, or you've treated the complete, root technically if it wasn't plucked, but that you're not plucking, and then you should be judging from your results. So I think that most of the time you should be entering maintenance at month 9. Yeah. Like if it's a beard, it's probably going to be a year to like a year and 3 months, but most of the time by month 9, clients should be, just kind of like little hairs here and there, almost coming in like once every 3 to 4 weeks, and appointments should be short. If you're going on 2 years on the same area with the same amount of time, like you have to just go back and check what's going on. Is the client tweezing in between, right? There's obviously a lot of different things.
Sue, this is Sue and Hannah both commented in here, but that's actually a really great question. Here's the deal. And I was about to say this. So month 9, okay, if we're thinking about like when they should be going to that, are they following the recommended treatment plan to get to that level? Okay, so the frequency of your sessions is dependent on the aggressiveness of the growth to begin with. So how much hair is in there, how quickly it comes back around, how long your hairs can get in that space. So like a couple weeks ago, we had talked about, I think it was on here, where we talked about that like sometimes you can see somebody grow like a sizable beard, and the next time they'll have something that's not next time. Another person will have like a stubbly one, and that's as much as it gets, right? Well, one person has a longer anagen cycle than the other, okay? And so a person that can grow that like ZZ Top facial hair is not having a like maintenance achieved at 9 months, because like the hairs have not even, like we haven't seen everything yet. So that's why she was saying with the beard, it's like, it's going to be different. So frequency will depend on like how often.
Also, sure. And also I kind of, and this goes
part of the consultation when I explain treatment plan, my goal at your appointment time is to book enough time that I clear the whole area when you come in. Now that's feasible in some places and it's not feasible in others, right? So we talked about marathon clearings of beards. I'm not going to be clearing your beard from cheekbone to collarbone in one session. Eventually we will. We'll get there. We'll work on this. But let's say you're coming in and it's just like this part, right? So we're just doing like the PCOS type facial hair that is not super, super dense. So the frequency is probably once a week, because if it's fairly aggressive hair growth, it's going to be at least once a week. And the length of time is however long I need to clear that whole area. I want you to leave with it bald so that you're not touching it in between. And that's my frequency. So it's going to be once a week and then eventually once every 2 weeks as it starts to slow down. When do I change appointment like length and frequency? Usually once every 3 months. And that's when you're changing the stair step. And so by the time you're getting to month 9, we've gone through 3 full cycles. So each hair was treated maybe like 3 times at this point. Some of them have died off in the first time. Some of them it took twice. Some of them are 3 times. And some of the lingerers, the ones that just can't get the hint, are still the ones growing in. So that's the part where you're kind of getting into 9 months. The hairs that are still growing in have been zapped before, probably a few times. And you're just getting the stragglers. So if you're doing this correctly, that you should be killing off. I tell them, like, I think that there's always a percentage that I just get perfectly, right? And then that hair doesn't grow back in anymore. But the bigger the hair, the more dense, the more deep, the more cells there are, the harder it is for me to be one and done, right? So then we have regrowth. This regrowth is going to be smaller, is going to be, lighter, thinner, where the same spiel we always give. And then I have to zap it again. And so the smaller the hair, the more of a chance there is that I am one and done. That's why peach fuzz is once or twice. But beard hairs is like 4 to 6 times, depending, just like bikinis. And like how many times in bikini, I've had clients that come in and they have one hair and it's just like, why aren't you dying? But it's one hair.
Yeah. It's like I call that one Rasputin because it just won't die. But there's a couple things in here. So I went to go try to drop a link in there. For whatever reason, it's saying that it's 404 not found. So Sue, when it comes to learning treatment plans, a lot of times in school, to get you to a point where you really understand how to treatment plan, sometimes takes a little bit of that getting to know yourself as a technician. Okay, because that treatment plan is going to change. However, Joanie has a lecture that we did earlier this year, the staircase model one, that was in our platform, but I don't know if we've made it like the home study into that in there. So Joanie, if you know where that home study is, like if you want to drop that in there, that's, what's crazy is like, I love, that's one of my favorite lectures to listen to, is because it's one of those ones where I feel like, even though I love to treatment plan and I know, like I'm confident in my treatment planning, I still find new morsels every time she gives that lecture. And I really do think that there is something very solid about the way she describes it, that it is worth popping on there and doing the home study, because it's just really comprehensive information. I don't, so if you can do that, I would do that.
And Sue, like when you're talking about like speed, I'm not even, the only way that this would affect your treatment plan is, like let's say it takes me an hour to clear this and it takes you 4. Then that just means that maybe this client, you're doing 2-hour appointments twice a week because that's the speed you're working on. Mm-hmm. But every week the client gets cleared. Mm-hmm. So then the frequency is the same as mine. It's just that the hours spent on the table is going to be a little different. And with time, speed doesn't come from how fast you jab the probe into the follicle or how fast you yank the hair out of the follicle. We kind of are going back to like one of the pitfalls is that I feel like people try to go fast, but they compromise the quality of their insertions. And success in electrolysis comes from accuracy of insertion. So you just, that's your goal. That is the number one thing that you need to focus on. And then with time, as you get more experience, the speed will come. My speed doesn't come from how fast I jab the probe inside the follicle. It comes from not having to judge angles anymore. because it's just is second nature.
Yeah.
So I know how to set up and I go in, and so eventually that will happen too. It's just that, but I don't yank so hard that I tweeze the hairs. I'm actually pretty discriminatory about that. I want to make sure that it slides out, and I still don't poke through tissues. I'll back up and insert again if I'm hitting resistance. So I'm still looking for the same things that a student is looking for.
Yeah.
Every single insertion that never goes away. But, you have to be able to just you're just going to get quicker at reading that. So, and that comes with time.
And in your early days of being an electrologist, I know that we're about to go over here, but in your early days of being an electrologist, I really encourage you to scale your price scale as so that you're welcoming people in initially, off of your expertise in that space. Because it allows you to have that learning curve of that speed and accuracy and judgment. And your clients will be happy. They don't care as long as they got their value. And their value comes from your accuracy over your speed any day. I always wanted to be the fastest electrologist. And I remember one time we were at a conference and somebody said that they did I don't know, it was 1,000 hairs an hour. And I was like, whoa, how? But at the time I was a blend operator and I didn't understand synchro. And it was peach fuzz and it was all those little things, right? And people will hear that hair counter and they'll think that that's the goal. No, the goal is hit the target. That's it. And kill that hair. And so definitely don't be so hard on yourself and you're saying I'm slow.
I am hard on myself, and that's
You're
part of the problem. I want to be perfect, and honestly, I tell my clients, if you can find someone who can do a perfect insertion every time, go to that electrologist. Give me their information. I'm going to go to that electrologist. Also, I'm still struggling with being human. But as Joanie was saying, 9 months, I have a client, she has PCOS. She has been on, she comes 90 minutes once a week, and I haven't even gotten to clear her neck yet.
But then that's your treatment plan, and that's okay too. I had a client, we worked on her face for a year, and she would only do 1 hour a week, never more. And so do you think that I was able to clear, and she didn't have that much because she was on hormones from a fairly young age. And so she never really grew in that much facial hair. But, by the time she was going to be moving, I had barely cleared her cheeks, maybe for the last 2 months of her treatment plan. So she was like, well, it's been a year. Am I done? I was like, no, because we just started the countdown on your cheeks. So she would have been 2 years in probably. So it would have been next summer, she probably would have been done or close to. So that's the nature of her treatment plan. This is what she wanted to do. It's not for lack of me saying you need to come in more. You need to do more time. If you can't handle more than an hour, come twice a week, 3 times a week. Because the faster I go through and clear the area, the quicker you get to that permanency that you're looking for. But that takes some give and take. If the client's not willing to work with you on that, then it is what it is.
And I've found that when I clear a big area, when she comes back, sometimes the touch-up takes the whole time, just because I like to keep the area touched up before I clear more.
And that's a good strategy. I also work that way.
Good. Yeah, I do that too. I'm
So I don't touch new growth. I always go back over my work first because that hair is just in prime stage.
I know that, Sue, I'm really proud of you for that vulnerability of saying these things because you are not alone. This is very typical concerns that a lot of us have when we're finding our vibe in our workspace. And so I do want to thank you for that because I think that's really cool to open up like that. So don't even you are doing everything that you should be doing and probably more to make yourself an excellent technician. And that's what will get you there. And that'll get your speed.
Yep.
Yeah.
On that note, I think we should probably end for today. We can definitely touch again on treatment planning. I know it's a very important topic, and we can maybe talk about some case studies next week if we're interested in doing that.
If anybody wants to do that homework assignment and you guys want to send us over some of your difficult cases that you're losing your mind over, if we have like, I would say in an hour's time, give us like 4 people. So like the first 4 that send them in, send us photo documentation, kind of a brief overview of what you know from their health history, and then what your treatment plan looks like. And we can definitely help kind of guide you in those spaces. So you give us 4 difficult cases, we'll give you some ideas.
Mm-hmm. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for being here. And we'll talk to y'all later.
Bye.
All right. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone who shared their insights. These conversations help reinforce the standards and professionalism that set electrology apart.